the same that they know about us. Like there's some stuff from last year. There's stuff. Their defense coordinator has a resume. I have a resume. There's tape. So you watch that stuff and you figure out, hey, you better be ready to adjust, and you can't wait to halftime to adjust, and you better be ready in the second and third series to adjust. So there are definitely things that you put on the field to see, hey, how are they going to play this? How are they playing this? Like, what are they going to do this for versus this formation? What are they doing versus this personnel grouping? And you build openers that way. So you see, it reveals some stuff to you.
All right. Welcome back to the GamecockScoop.com podcast, the official podcast of GamecockScoop.com on Rivals. I'm Caleb, joined by Pauline and Alan, and we are breaking down the UNC game week. Be sure to follow us on X and Instagram, and I think that's the first time that I haven't called it Twitter first, but and YouTube, all at Rivals Gamecock, and then GamecockScoop.com for all the news. Plenty of premium articles, plenty of free articles. We're getting ready for game week. That was Dowell Loggins talking about the need to kind of start fast, making game adjustments before halftime. I know that wasn't meant to be a shot at Marcus Satterfield, but I do think that probably folks that have been, sort of wringing their hands over the past couple of seasons were probably at least encouraged to hear that. Now, whether or not that actually happens, we'll find out soon. But definitely one of the criticisms, I think, of the previous offensive coordinator was if his game script did not go according to plan, like at the beginning of the game, it usually never really bounced back. In-game adjustments weren't his strong suit, and we'll have to see if that works out a little bit better for Dowell Loggins. Granted, I think South Carolina fans got a little spoiled because they had one of the greatest in-game adjusters of all time in Steve Spurrier for like a decade, so that'll ruin anyone. But before we get fully into the UNC game, let's talk a little bit about recruiting. Don't have a ton to share. I did talk a little bit about Daniel Hill in the weekly recruiting wrap-up last week. I'll have the visitors list for the Charlotte game, the UNC game in Charlotte tomorrow. There are several guys that are planning to make it in. I believe Jalen Gilchrist was one of those. A lot of 2025 names, which, I mean, unsurprisingly, the 2024 class is almost wrapped up. But we'll see some late emergences like we have both of the last two seasons too. Some of which we might talk about today. Thinking like Lenora Sellers, who didn't get an offer till October last year. So anyway, let's talk UNC. So before we get into like actually breaking down the game, we heard from the players and each of the coaches this week in their press conferences. And to me, it seems like they're just as ready for the season to start as we are. They're kind of tired of talking about it. They just want to kind of lace it up and get things going. What are some of the big takeaways from this past week and kind of where their heads are at as we head into this week? Alan, I'll start with you.
Not a normal week. Not a normal week one. I think Beamer said, no disrespect to Eastern Illinois and Georgia State, especially not Georgia State, but no, you're playing a ranked opponent. You're playing in front of 70,000 people on a neutral site. There's recruits there on both sides. This game day is going to be there. I mean, geez, I think the line Beamer used was game day wasn't calling to come to Eastern Illinois or Georgia State. Like this is a huge week one game. And I know they know that. I know all of you out there know that. You've been thinking about it since January, since pretty much when the Gator Bowl ended. But this is not a regular week one, and they're going to have to be ready to go immediately because this can get out of hand quick if they're not.
One of the big stories, I guess, coming out, and pretty much every coach this week talked about it, was that they started off the week a little bit sluggish. Shane Beamer kind of came in there with like a pissed off attitude, I guess, on Tuesday, saying that he was disappointed that they got their butts kicked. He said it was a crap effort or whatever. Dowell Loggins kind of came in with like a good cop attitude yesterday. I feel like, where he was like, they had a long break. It was a little bit expected. And he also said that they had had a better practice on Wednesday. So I guess it's easier to talk about the bad practice once you've kind of scrubbed it from the system. Pauline, I don't know if you had a chance to watch any of the pressers or whatever from this week, but what were some of the things that have stood out to you as they get prepared?
Well, actually, both of those points. First off, it is wrapping up the first week of school, so quote unquote syllabus week, where to many undergraduate students is the last hurrah. So I could understand why Shane was a little, probably a little upset at the players, but you know, it's all in fun. But then to Alan's point, that was one of the things that I'm most concerned about is the fact that they're itching to play their first game of the season and they already have all this hype and momentum around them, but I'm afraid that they might like burn out too quick and they're not going to be able to like they don't have the practice games that we had last season to be able to kind of work out those kinks that, you know, would be beneficial if we played the Duke's Mayo Bowl all the way at the end of the season versus it being the first one.
Yeah, I would say that this is definitely of the 3 Shane Beamer seasons the most anticipated and the one where you have the most hype. Obviously, you aren't full on ranked, but by most polls, when you look at the others receiving votes or whatever, you're like between the 25 and 30 range. If you win this game, you're immediately ranked. Game day is going to be there. So steady progress, but this is one of those moments where you need to seize that momentum and not fall on your face. From a recruiting standpoint, there's a lot of recruits that you're competing against North Carolina for that are going to be at that game. We've already seen over the summer, you lost Malcolm Ziegler to North Carolina at the last minute. So I do think that this game is important in many ways. And as we talked about, if they want to have the 2023 season that they like the upper ceiling limit of you got to win these toss-up games starting with this one.
I also think there's a proof of concept thing to be had here too. You know, it's easy to forget we're 9 months removed from it. There were a lot of questions about the Dowell Loggins hire from all of us. I don't think they were unfair questions, but all right, you hired an offensive coordinator who's got an NFL track record. He's been a position coach in college, but he's never called plays in college football. That was a risk, and I think we still know how that's going to work out. You go beat UNC. Okay, there's some proof of concept that this is off to a good start. Other side of the ball, you go beat Drake May. You beat a guy that might be the #1 pick at the NFL draft in April, a quarterback who's might be in the Heisman discussion. Okay, there's some proof of concept for what Clayton White's talked about. Like you can back up a lot of the things you've been saying for the last 8-9 months if you go out and put in a good performance Saturday in a way that you just can't do by beating Georgia State or Eastern Illinois week 1.
Yeah, definitely. And I put out an article at the beginning of the week that was 5 questions for the UNC game. And definitely the number one was, what does Dowell Loggins' offense look like? We think that there's going to be some carryover from last season. We know that he's put some things in Spencer Rattler's hands and feels confident in doing so. That's another storyline that we'll have to get to is this Rattler versus May showdown, which is, of course, what the national pundits are all talking about. But yeah, I'm really curious.
40 NFL scouts there, by the way.
Yeah, there's limited press box space because of how many scouts are going to be there. But yeah, so I'm just interested to see what Loggins' offense looks like. We think that they're gonna go fast sometimes, maybe not all the time. I know several players and Loggins himself talked about that a little bit this week. And we think that they're going to throw it around a lot, but we also know that there's some questions, especially on the O-line, especially in the run game, that are going to have to be answered on Saturday.
Yeah, I think that how is the Dowell Loggins offense going to look thing has been what we've been talking about since December, pretty much. I'm especially interested in just going back to what you played at the start of the show here. All right, any offensive coordinator worth of salt can script 10 plays, can script 12 plays. What does drive 3 look like? What does drive 4 look like? How are you adjusting? What does the in-game flow look like? How are you sequencing? You know, what are you calling in the second quarter to set up a play in the fourth quarter? All that stuff that you're just going to have to wait and see about is kind of what I'm interested in.
Yeah. As far as the showdown of the quarterbacks or whatever, Drake May is obviously the one that's coming in with all the hype. I believe Dowell Loggins gave a Andrew Luck comparison. He threw for over 4,000 yards last season. Widely, renowned as potentially the number 1 QB next year, probably number 2 behind Caleb Williams. Do we think that there's a chance that Rattler performs as well as Drake May or even better? And if he does that start to change the conversation around Rattler and his potential at the next level? Because there hasn't been a ton of talk about him at the NFL level. There hasn't been a ton of talk about his Heisman campaign, although I think you can buy like a plus 4,000 or whatever on Rattler. I mean, if he has a big game, what sort of igniter do you think that can be?
Yeah, go first.
Take it. Yeah.
All right. Because I actually have I typically am this person that has the hot take opinion here. So here's a hot take opinion again. I really don't believe that he's all worth the hype. I think he's very similar to a Stetson Bennett type deal where it's all just, I mean, he was good, but it wasn't I don't know. I just feel like he's a lot of over media hype, kind of like Ryan Helinski was, where everybody was just this quarterback's going to be the best quarterback, save us, whatever. Clearly didn't end up happening. I've been watching some of the film and it just doesn't impress me really, but that's watching film versus seeing it in real time and being able to review the practices like I would have been able to as I do for South Carolina. So that's my take. And that's only just through the videos and media hype I've seen, but that's my hot take.
He definitely, it'll be interesting to see how he does without his 2 leading receivers from last year. See who kind of steps into that role. Obviously, Josh Downs is with the Indianapolis Colts now. I mean, I think he's better than those 2 names you mentioned for sure. He has more mobility than both those guys, has a bigger arm or whatever. But I do think that there's something to be said for the lack of sturdy defense that he's had to face through most of his career. And also, seeing how he's going to perform without some of those veteran wide receiver talents. And I think if there's a strength of the South Carolina defense, it's got to be the secondary. So that's going to be an interesting test.
So as of, and we've talked about it a couple of times, we don't need to rehash the whole thing. You can go back to other podcasts. But as of 12:30 p.m. on Thursday, Tez Walker still has not been cleared for UNC. I mean, we've talked about it. That's a huge deal. I mean, for the record, I think that's nonsense. He didn't do anything wrong. The NCAA transfer portal rules are archaic at best. He probably should be eligible to play. That's a different conversation. If he's not, that's going to make life tougher for UNC. That's going to make life tougher for Drake May. And that's going to make life tougher for Chip Lindsey. Their new offensive coordinator is going to be calling plays too. He's called plays in college before, but I think there is, to go back to your original question, can Spencer Rattler outplay him? Yes. We watched him outplay Hendon Hooker last year. We watched him outplay DJ in the Clemson game. Can he? Yes. I think the bigger question here is more about South Carolina's front 7, front 4, because North Carolina can still run the ball too. And I think that's something that's getting overlooked here.
Yeah, that was going to be my next sort of question. You have Elijah Green coming back and Omari and Hampton. They both combined for over 1,000 yards and 14 touchdowns last year. Both averaged over 4 a carry. And like I said, Drake May is pretty mobile. He'll take off sometimes on his own. And one of the biggest concerns I thought last year was containing the edge in the run game, especially against a semi-mobile quarterback. You have a lot of questions at edge. We're going to see a lot of new faces. I mean, they released the depth chart this past week, and you had 6 different guys listed as possible starters at edge. Now I do think that to some degree that's because you have a decent amount of depth, but I also think that means you don't have true standouts either, right? I think they're all pretty good. They're all going to be able to hold down the spot. But I don't think that you've had anyone emerge as a true number 1 alpha edge to hold down that spot.
You don't have one. Go ahead, Paulie.
I just wanted to clarify. That was my point before. Was my hot take was about Drake May, but kind of my reasoning behind it. Also, not reasoning behind why I say it, but my skepticism towards it and why I believe that like Spencer could potentially. I don't want to say Spencer solely could beat it because our QB like depth like and choices are very like they're not concentrated. They're very spread out versus like we don't have a quarterback that is mobile and has like a dart for an arm. Like it's either one or the other typically, which we saw last year with Spencer and Luke. And I'm seeing out with Lenoris and stuff like that versus the one savior quarterback that like is coming in to, you know, carry the team type deal. So I think it's more of a team effort, but we will still pull through and prove ourselves.
I think my question, more so than Drake May, Elijah Green, more so how UNC scored. Look, you know they're going to score points. There's probably going to be at least one deep play, you know, take the top off the defense in this game. They're going to pick up a lot of yards. I don't think that you can give up 300, 350 yards and even still play well. It's just a good offense. Can you win a shootout? Like a true 42-38, 48-45. Can you win a shootout? Can you go back and forth like a tennis match? Can you get the one big play you need to maybe flip a possession in a shootout? That's more my question than Spencer Rattler and Drake May, is that if this is what we think it's going to – I know they can win a game in the 20s. We saw that last year. You know, the low 30s, I think, at the Clemson game, like that kind of pace. Just a no holds barred, both teams pick up 400, 500 yards, back and forth shootout. Can you actually win that? Is that more my question.
I guess if you're looking back to last year, you have two pretty good examples. You have the Arkansas game,
which you didn't win.
Which you did not win. You fell behind early. You did turn the offense on, but you kind of felt like you were playing catch up the whole time. And then you have the Tennessee game where you came out, scored on the first 5 or 6 possessions, and never really let off the gas there. Obviously, I think you can win a game without it necessarily going as perfectly as it did against Tennessee, because that's a rare occasion. But I do think if you fall down 14-17 early, it's going to be tough to get back into it against this sort of offense, even if you do get the offense going. I don't think that this is a game that you can score 0 points in the first quarter, or even 3 points in the first quarter and feel good about where the game's going.
Okay, I'm glad you brought up the 3, actually, because I wanted to get into that a little bit. I wrote it this morning. If you're a subscriber, GamecockScoop.com. Last year, the only team in the country, 131 teams, who went for it on fourth down at least 30 times and converted more than 70% was UNC. They're aggressive. They use all 4 downs. They don't like kicking field goals. They know their offense is their strength. They kind of steer into that. Does Shane Beamer need to do the same thing Saturday? Because he need to, you know, I don't think you're going to win this game with field goals personally, but does this need to be an aggressive Shane Beamer Saturday night?
I think we're going to be within a few, like I think whoever, because I know we're going to do our predictions, but I think regardless of who is winning, like it would be really depressing if it was like a Missouri type of beat where we just completely choked. But I know that even though it's a neutral site, we're the home team and like we have the quote unquote home team advantage, but we have previously played them before. There are still players on the team that have already played the same game before. So the nerves might be like, you know, diminished a little bit. But the biggest thing for me is that, because I've seen it so many times before, is we'll blow out the first half and then it's like we're holding on for dear life by end of the third quarter. So that's where I think this game, like the direction of this game is going to be headed at the end of the day. So I don't know. It's going to be down to the kind of a shootout vibe where if we can kind of hold on till the end, then we'll do it. But, you know, as soon as we start slipping, it's like a downhill from
So
there.
if it is a shootout vibe, Do you need to be more aggressive? Do you need to not kick field goals? Do you need to go for it on a 4th and 1 inside your own territory? Like, I kind of think you do.
And it's something that both of these teams have done a lot, like you hit on in that article over the last couple of seasons. I expect there to be not a lot of punts for sure. You know, if there's 4th and shorts, then I think we've seen a propensity for them to go for it. I also wonder, like, we've talked about this a little bit throughout the offseason, like, are people on to the special teams tricks of South Carolina yet? Like, is that something that teams are preparing for now? Because I think that they probably are. Every week they're having to spend time in their practices looking out for that fake punt, looking out for whatever. Do we see things get a little bit more complicated? Do we see them maybe do that less and keep the offense out there because people are going to be expecting it more? I don't know. Like, it's just an interesting thing to think about now that that's kind of the South Carolina brand is special teams. Can you still get some of those, like, easy conversions that you got over the past couple of years? Now, I never want to doubt Pete Limbo. I think
that's kind of where I am with it. I just figured out, and their playbook's big. They do a lot of different concepts, and they do it in week 1. Remember Eastern Illinois? You had the Buttle Huddle week after the first score, go for 2. Last year, fake field goal, set up a touchdown. They like to start the. I lean towards you're going to see some of that Saturday, and I think you might have to see it.
I agree with that, where at the moment, until, you know, the team kind of develops its identity a little bit more and figures out, you know, what plays will be like the best fit, like, we're going to see the trick plays. I mean, like we discussed when we were going through and creating our mock depth chart, our special teams is our strongest area, which, I mean, like Caleb said, is our South Carolina identity, but it is all we have, in my personal opinion. Like, as soon as somebody catches on to the tricks and, you know, maybe gets a little schemy, we don't really have a second line that will be as good. I think that's my personal opinion. I think there's only, like, our first line, as soon as somebody gets like knocked down, it's going to be detrimental for our success.
As far as the matchups in this one go, defensively on both sides, I feel like there's a little bit of a strength on weakness thing happening. So I think that North Carolina's DBs are probably their biggest question. South Carolina's passing game is obviously its strength. As we said earlier, South Carolina's edge rushers are probably their biggest question. I guess that this is more of weakness on weakness, but the weakness may not be able to be exploited. North Carolina is kind of shuffling around their tackles, but they feel pretty good about their interior offensive line, which is similar to South Carolina. But yeah, the question is, do those edge rushers actually take advantage? Are they able to get some pressure on Drake May? Are they able to hold that edge, even though, you know, maybe that's a weakness? So I do think we are setting up for a high-scoring game, just because I think probably the strengths of each defense aren't really able to take advantage here.
Yeah, and I think too, if you're talking about strengths of defenses not taking advantage, and look, we know both these defenses are going to give up yards. It's just what this is going to be. You need Spencer Rattler to not give away a possession, because that might be all it takes. Do either of you know off the top of your head how many interceptions Drake May threw all of last season?
Like 2
interceptions,
14 games.
Yeah.
He doesn't turn the ball over much. 12 for Spencer last year, I think.
Yeah, and that was
more
like
than I can count on my
Cody
fingers.
threw 2.
I believe that was 10 or 11 of those through.
He had more interceptions than
something.
touchdowns until the Tennessee game.
Yeah.
Point being, you probably can't even throw one Saturday. I mean, maybe you can get away with one, but you definitely can't give away more than one possession Saturday and expect to win the game.
At the very least, I think your turnover ratio is going to have to come out even, or maybe slightly to your advantage. Now, we've seen that South Carolina defensive backs are pretty good at creating turnovers, but you're playing against a quarterback that's a pretty good decision maker. So
that's kind of what I'm getting at. Is you need good decision making. Spencer Rattler Saturday. And look, we don't have to do quarterback film here, but you can't turn the ball over in this game. It's just what it is.
All I've seen at practice is Spencer working on like ball holding drills so he doesn't get stuffed or sacked. So I mean, hopefully he can hold on to the ball and have enough time to think about those decisions like Drake May can do.
I do think he's going to have time. This UNC pass rush is not
fine.
Good. Yeah. I mean, you call it what it is. They were not good last year.
As you're working in this new offensive line and have all these questions at tackle for South Carolina's offensive line as well, I think that's a good thing. You're probably going to see a lot of those guys throughout this game, like those 4 guys that we've talked about: Sidney Fugar, Jackson Hughes,
Casey Henry, Tayshawn Wanamaker.
Exactly.
What's your opinion on him? Because honestly, like I'm skeptical. No, Henry, I'm skeptical that Kaysen is gonna really like. I don't know. Even like yes, and I know that he has skill, but because of all last season, I mean, like we saw him
play in 2 games last year.
Yeah, because I know, and then he got surgery over the summer. Yeah, but I feel like I see him on the sidelines more often than not during fall camp. I would see him more like not being a participant in the drill, which obviously is probably due to his knee and stuff. But I don't necessarily like. It's like good for him, but I don't see
talented but raw is what I would say.
Needs to be polished. I know that he has.
He's a redshirt freshman. He's played in 2 games.
Exactly.
And that's something else I wrote about this week too. But look, you're going to have a lot of freshmen playing Saturday. You just are. I know we got a topic on freshmen a little bit later here, but a lot of new guys, a lot of new faces, a lot of guys that's something Shane talked about Tuesday. Definitely never played in an environment like that before. Whether that's Casey Henry, whether that's Desmond Umeozulu going back to the edge position. Some secondary players, Jalen Kilgore, Pup Howard is going to be a big part of this game at linebacker. I'm going to be interested when we get that travel roster to see how many true freshmen made the trip, because I'm expecting it to be in double. I'd be surprised if it's not in double digits, to be honest with you.
And to answer your question on Henry, I think if he probably doesn't have that surgery, he talent-wise is probably locked into one of those tackle spots. But I do think that's one of the reasons that they brought in these transfers and stuff, is there's been a little bit of unknown and youth at the tackle spot. Because, like, again, I believe in the future talent of Tree Babalade. I believe in the future talent of Marquis Anderson. It's just, are they ready now? And I think probably that surgery set back Casey Henry a little bit. But I think by midseason, he probably, if I'm guessing, as long as he's healthy, he probably has one of those spots on lock. But who knows? We'll see.
I'd be interested in if a RJ Roderick situation happened but as a freshman.
Meaning?
As like, since we all have first line, like there's going to be a lot of freshmen like in our first lineup. Who's going to replace
someone gets
them?
hurt and then a freshman comes in?
Like first game, because
last year. Okay.
Exactly. Like who's on the backup when like a freshman has to step up to the plate like that, but a freshman was the one who was already there in the first place. Like we're just, I feel like
I think that you probably feel better about the depth across the board than you have at any point in the Beamer era from a talent perspective, but from a veteran, like has been there, done that, seen it. You're pretty thin this year. You're gonna definitely have to rotate in some freshmen. If some people go down for injury, you're gonna have to play some true freshmen. Which, I mean, if we want to, let's do our predictions real quick, and then we can get into some of these season-long superlatives, because I think we're going to talk a lot about the freshmen there. All right. We've talked a little bit about the matchups. We talked about the Drake May, Spencer Rattler experience. Push comes to shove. Let's hear each of your picks for this game. Give me a score. Give me who's going to win. if you want to add a little bit about what you think is going to happen specifically. But Pauline, you want to lead us off?
Yes, because my computer's going to probably die after this. So I'll give my take. But as always, I trust my gut feelings. And my gut feeling is saying that although I'm comparing it to a bowl game, I feel like it's going to be or like pan out very similarly to the Gator Bowl, except we're not going to choke. We're going to hold on till the very but it's going to be like the reverse. It's going to be like Clemson, but in the scoring range of Notre Dame and South Carolina. So I guess I would say, I was talking about this yesterday. 34-37.
South Carolina. And for those of you that haven't been listening, Pauline's gut feelings did have a win over Tennessee, which ended up happening. So
it was the only one.
That's true. We definitely we had a gloom and doom podcast that week, and then we were like, wait, okay.
You know why we had a gloom and doom podcast? Because some of us, and by some of us I mean me, drove to Gainesville the week before.
Yeah, I mean, there wasn't a whole lot of reason for optimism at that point. But then, you know,
always the optimist over here.
Hey, someone has
good
to
juju.
Be, right? All right, so 37-34 South Carolina over North Carolina. That's pretty close to what mine's going to be too. Alan, what about you?
I think we're all going to be in that same kind of range. I do think it has to be a little bit lower scoring than that. I very much a need to see it with Dowell Loggins in a game before I completely buy into it. And I do think for all the talent North Carolina's offense has, there's still question marks there too, especially at wide receiver. I don't subscribe to the idea that they're going to roll the ball out and score 40 points just because they have Drake May.
Thank you.
I still think they're going to put up yards and probably hit a big play at some point, but I'm going to say 31-28 South Carolina. I'm on the same. I think South Carolina wins close. I don't see this game getting away from either team, but
if it does, it's going to be us. If it does get away from a team, it will be us. So we have to make sure.
I do think and look, he still might end up playing. The Tez Walker thing matters. Like, that's a 1,000-yard receiver North Carolina brought into play that right now isn't going to be able to play. And I think that matters more than people are maybe giving it credit for. I think South Carolina finds a way to get this done.
So I did my way too early predictions throughout the summer. I'm almost done with them. Only 2 days before the season starts. So you can go, if you just look up early football previews and predictions, GamecockScoop, you can see each of those. And I'm looking back at my North Carolina one that I did back in early June. And I said South Carolina 35, North Carolina 34. I think I'm just going to stick with that. That sounds about where things are. Maybe some sort of special teams play, blocked extra point, safety, something weird to get that score. But I think this is about as close as you can get. I wouldn't want to bet on this game.
I've been advising everybody who asks me, like, what's the inside beats? Like, who should I like? Because of my gut feelings, everybody knows about them. But I'm like, I don't even want to, like, give y'all my opinion just in the slim chance that,
North Carolina favored by 2.5 right now for those who have a line. But
that's what I think South Carolina and Clemson were. Like, they were very similar.
It was like
really?
10, I think. Yeah.
In the very beginning, wasn't it closer? Like, and then
it might have moved a little bit after it opened, but
yeah. I feel like when I first remember it, it was something close. And then it got like 4.5 or something. I don't remember.
No, I'm pretty sure it was bigger than that. Partly because it was Clemson. Wow, it ended at 14. Clemson was a 14-point favorite.
I was about to say I think most people thought the Tennessee thing was a fluke at that point, and then it ended up not being. So, let's go really quickly. Pauline, you got time to pick the rest of the schedule real quick. All right, so we all picked North Carolina win, although very narrow. Let's get our records for the season down on the book. So 3 wins for North Carolina. I assume we all have South Carolina being Furman. We don't really have to break that down too much.
I mean, you and I did the first half already, Caleb, the schedule on this, but
All right.
I
Do we all have
don't know about
losses
Georgia
against
yet.
Georgia?
Yeah.
What if
Pauline?
what if you pull like a Ryan Helinski? Like what if for some we just like blow it out of the park?
It's gonna have
If
to
that
be
makes sense.
something weird. It's definitely gonna have to be a weird game if you're gonna win that one.
It's
But
about
there's no way
time
that I can
though.
predict
And
that.
I feel like they have to come back now after like they kind of got their ego taken down a notch this past season.
I think I had it 3-3 after Florida. We did this, Caleb, for the first time, so that kind of accounts for me through there. I think you did too. Maybe you had 4-2.
Yeah.
For
So
Florida.
we're all pretty much on the same page for those first three. We both had Mississippi State wins. Pauline, what are you thinking about the Mississippi State game?
Yes, I'm gonna go with that, but I also feel like we could potentially like it could be a Missouri type
That's
game
gonna
where
get
like we
weird.
should have won. Yeah.
Yeah, and I'm actually wrong. I think Alan, you had flipped yours to a loss against Mississippi State when we talked a couple weeks ago.
I had them splitting. I think there goes Pauline. I had them splitting UNC and Mississippi State just because I think that's the way it's going to end up going. But
all right. So then you got at Tennessee. Me and Alan both had a loss. What do you think, Pauline? At Tennessee.
We still have Pauline.
Her picture is there, but she's not there. All right. Well, whatever. We were 6-6 through the first part of the schedule, so you and I can pick up after that. So, oh yeah, her computer died. So we'll just pick up where we were. So we were 3-3. I was 4-2, and you were 3-3 through the Florida game. What do you think at Mizzou for Week 7?
I think you get that one done finally. It's
yeah.
gonna turn eventually.
I think you have to if you want to have any sort of success this season that you're hoping for. But Columbia is weird. I feel like it never actually works out the way that you think it's going to in that series. But yeah, I have a win there as well. So that has me at 5-2. That has you at 4-3. And then they go to A&M. What do you think about Kyle Field?
I don't think you win that game. I think A&M, we can talk about A&M too, but I think A&M's better. I think there's more stability at quarterback there with Connor Wegman than you had with Haynes King. It's just, that's another one where it's like, it's really hard to win 2 road trips in a row going that far, 2 weeks in a row. I think one way or another, you probably split those two. And the way I set that up is you beat Mizzou and lose to A&M. But yeah, other way around, it wouldn't surprise me.
We got a couple of people putting in their predictions in the,
12-0.
the chat, by the way.
9-3. Everybody's 12-0.
Yeah, Bullish Zombie, Rebel saying 12-0 or 11-1. Wouldn't that be something?
9-3 or 10-2.
Yeah, Hip Hop Madness saying 9-3 or 10-2. Pauline just texted us and said hers was 7-5, which I think is what yours is going to end up being too. Let's just look at these last few games, and then we'll talk some Week 1 football from a national perspective. So yeah, splitting Mizzou and A&M, and then you get a kind of easy stretch here for a second. You get 3 straight home games. You got Jacksonville State, Vandy, and Kentucky. I have them winning all 3 of those.
I do too, actually.
I think that no matter what happens to that middle stretch, you get to kind of breathe out a sigh, get back in front of your home crowd, make that final push. I assume you're going to be within range of making a bowl if you win those 3 games. And I think they get it done. So I have 8-3 at that point in the schedule.
I'm at 7-4.
And you're at 7-4 at that point in the schedule. And then we're going into the Clemson game, which is also at home. So 4-game home stretched in the season, kind of crazy. What are you thinking on that?
I mean, I'm going to say loss right now because I had it 7-5 just in general. So I think one way or another they end up at 7-5, but I definitely wouldn't be surprised if they pulled it out at home. I just think Clemson's better. I think the Garrett Riley thing is going to work personally. I think Klubnik's better than DJ. I just think they're better across the board than they were last year. And they'll find a way to get it done. But if you found, I mean, you'd be going into that game the same place you were last year, 7-4, trying to get to 8 with a win over Clemson. Or in your case, I guess you'd be at 8 trying to get to 9. But I think you end up 7-5. You probably drop that game, but it wouldn't surprise me at all if you switched out another game and you beat Clemson.
Yeah, in my official picks that I put in, back in July or whatever, I said 8-4, and I had losses to Georgia and Clemson. But in my bold prediction last week, I did say that they're going to win one of those. So why not have a little fun here? I'll say they'll beat Clemson at the end of the season. I'm going to put them down for a 9-3 season. Bullish Rebel said in his 11-1 scenario, it's either Georgia or Clemson that they're going to lose to, but he doesn't think they're going to lose a game. All right.
I can't say I agree with that, but
hey, that would be a really fun season. Make this podcast really, really fun all season too.
Keep us busy in December.
And then, Pauline said 7-5. If you want to see all of our staff picks, that's at GamecockScoop.com. You just look up GamecockScoop staff picks for the 2023 season. Back when we did it, we all were 8-4 or higher. But I think
a little bit lower than I was in July.
Well, yeah, at that point, I think we were expecting maybe a transfer running back to land, or like some of the holes to be filled. I can't remember exactly what the mindset was. And we've kind of learned a little bit more about some of these teams that they're going to play. From a national perspective, let's just do playoff predictions real quick, and then we'll talk about week 1 games. Who are your 4 playoff teams?
Okay, hold me to it. If I had it different than what I put in July, if you have that open. But I think in July I said Georgia, Michigan, Florida State, and USC. Is that the 4 I had on there?
You had Georgia, Michigan, SoCal, Florida State.
Well, yeah.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Sorry. I just read it weird. So I had pretty similar at Georgia, Michigan, USC, and Texas. Are you changing it?
Texas. No, I'm keeping that. I was trying to remember what I had. I'm keeping that. Texas. Walk me through that one.
So I actually think I'm going to switch 2 of them from then. After seeing USC play last week, I still just don't think they have the defense to make it all the way.
You don't think Marshawn Lloyd's going to win a Heisman there?
The second string running back for USC? No, I don't. Ooh, sorry. Anyway, I just don't think that they have the defense to.
No, you're right. That was watching San Jose State move the ball pretty comfortably, and then most of that game was kind of jarring.
I think I'm going Georgia, Michigan still, but I actually am starting to feel a little bit more optimistic about Alabama making it back. This feels like one of those seasons where people don't believe in them as much, and Nick Saban sort of uses that as fuel to make a run. My 4th team, Florida. I don't believe in Florida State. I guess we're going to find out this weekend.
Yeah. Can't wait for that one.
I don't know who I want to put otherwise.
So if we're just doing the math here, you've got 2 SEC teams and a Big Ten team. You could stick with Texas, although if you have Bama there, maybe not Texas, because Bama's going to play Texas week 2, unless you have Texas winning all the other games.
Which
could happen. Big 12's down this year. If you don't like USC, I don't know. Do you think?
I don't really like Ohio State.
Michael Penix, really good quarterback out. There's a path there. They got an interesting game. They're playing Boise State this week.
I think I'm going to lock in Washington, because I think when push comes to shove, Washington beats out USC for the pack, whatever it is now.
Whatever's left.
And that ultimately earns them a spot. So Georgia, Michigan, Washington, and Alabama are my 4.
Okay. I can see that. I'm just in on Florida State running game wise, especially. Got the running back Trey Benson back. Jordan Travis can run. They got all their offensive linemen back. I just think they're going to be able to dictate terms of the line of scrimmage a lot. But like you said, we're going to find out early, because they play LSU week 1 and Clemson week 4. So we'll know before September's out about Florida State.
Yeah. So as we said, game day is going to be at South Carolina and North Carolina, because that is definitely the best game on Saturday. But there's some other pretty big games this weekend, starting tonight, which I have no plans tonight. I can't wait to sit and watch some Florida and Utah. Tomorrow we will publish our staff picks for week 1. Right now, we're all kind of neck and neck, 4-1, 3-2-ish from last week. Although you and I did pretty bad against the spread last week.
Yeah, so I was counting a little bit more from Vanderbilt against a Hawaii team in a rebuild. But
Yeah. So who do you have in Utah versus Florida tonight? Right. The line that we locked in on that was Utah minus 6.5.
6.5.
But Perry said earlier that he saw some news about Utah's quarterback.
Cam Rising is out. Yeah.
He is officially out. I hadn't been on that side of Twitter yet this morning. So that obviously affects that a little bit. But how are you feeling about that one?
I'm still laying the points. Utah at home, altitude. Florida's had some travel problems this week. Not their fault because the hurricane, but they had to leave on Tuesday and like spend a night in Dallas or something. They didn't get to Salt Lake till like late last night, from what I read. I think Utah's better up front. I don't believe in Graham Mertz. It's a revenge game for Utah. It's a tough place to play. I'll lay the 6.5 there.
Yeah, I think I'm still sticking with it. And now you can get that game actually at Utah -5, which makes me even want it even more. I just don't. I think Utah's defense is going to hold up just fine. There's nothing about Florida's offense that makes me all that afraid. And yeah, they'll just get it done enough on offense to pull it out. Nebraska and Minnesota also play tonight. Get to see Marcus Satterfield.
That's what I was going to say. The Marcus Satterfield.
I did. So our good friend Zach Carpenter, who covered recruiting here at GamecockScoop for a little bit last year, is now the publisher of the Rivals Nebraska site. And we were talking about Satterfield when he first got hired, and then I did see some quotes that probably give some South Carolina fans nightmares about learning a complicated scheme and blah blah blah. So we'll see. Maybe it works out, maybe not. Minnesota is -7 right now, and that's what the line was at the beginning of the week too. Who are you picking there?
I think I don't remember what I put on the sheet, but I think I had picked Minnesota to lay the points. That's a tough one there too. Conference game. Minnesota's breaking in a new quarterback too after Tanner Morgan finally graduated after 8,000 years. I just think Minnesota's a little bit more of a known quantity right now and playing at home. But you and I both know how it goes when you're breaking in a new quarterback. That can easily spiral on you. And
yeah, I think that there's still some work to be done on that Nebraska roster from the Scott Frost era. And even if I do think Matt Rule's going to get things figured out over there, I think opening game of the season, you got to go Minnesota there. You said Minnesota wins but doesn't cover.
Okay.
And I have Minnesota.
Yeah, I'll stick with that. Conference games are usually closer. I think that can still be like a Minnesota by 6, Minnesota by 4 thing.
As we move ahead, we have Louisville -7.5 at Georgia Tech. That game's actually pretty interesting to me. I want to see what happens there. We across the board picked Louisville to cover that 6.5, but I have like a weird optimism about Georgia Tech as they're building a little bit. I don't know. I guess I just don't believe in Louisville all that much. I wouldn't have put any money on that, but since I had to lock something in.
It's tough there. Georgia Tech was better last year down the stretch with the interim Brett Key who got the job. They were better up front. I still don't. They've got the A&M transfer, Haynes King at quarterback there now. I mean, Haynes King wasn't that good at A&M, but you drop him down to the ACC from the SEC. Maybe that picks up a little bit.
He can run. Yeah.
He can run. That's true. Louisville, first game with a new coach. That's also not a known commodity. I think I just picked Louisville because they're the more talented roster. But, like, it's a road game, conference, week 1. Like, that is really a who-the-hell-knows game.
And then,
wouldn't bet on it, but
yeah. And by the way, that game is Friday at 7:30 Eastern. Saturday morning, got Colorado and TCU. Coach Prime making his debut. This was my easiest pick of the week. I picked TCU to cover the 20.5. I would have picked TCU to cover anything. I'll probably pick against Colorado most of the season. I don't know what's happening there. Casual bettors just like knowing Deion Sanders and being like, oh yeah, they're going to be good.
73 transfers, is it?
And a lot of them from like lower level. They are
that doesn't turn
small team. Look at their heights and weights compared to pretty much any opponent they play the rest of the year, and that'll tell you pretty much all you need to know.
It doesn't turn in 1 year. 73 transfers. Deion Sanders has never had to coach a team where he had less talent to work with. He always had the better roster at Jackson State. I think that's a 2 or 3 win football team this year. Honestly, I'll take the team that played for the national title last year, laying any number.
Yep, I'm with you there. Obviously, they have some things that they have to replace. They lost their offensive coordinator as well, but that roster is just
so
head over heels better. Yeah, exactly. We got in-state action, Coastal at UCLA. UCLA was favored at 14.5 when we made this pick. How are we feeling about the Chanticleers?
Again, if I put something different on the sheet, tell me, but I think I picked UCLA to win but not cover. Is that what I put on there?
You did, and that is what I picked as well. I still think Coastal has some juice to make this one interesting, but UCLA should, based on the recruiting over the past 3 years compared to Coastals or whatever, should have the Jimmies and Joes to pull it out.
As long as you have Grayson McCall, you have a chance there. And I actually think Coastal might have the better quarterbacks. I know UCLA is still figuring out that they have 3-way quarterback battle going on there, replacing DTR. Quarterback play keeps it close, but it's a tough trip. I probably won't see any of this game. It's 10:30. I'll be doing post-game stuff in Charlotte, but it should be one of the more interesting games of week 1. And I think Coastal hangs around a little bit if you're going to give me 2 touchdowns.
This one was probably, I guess, the least consensus for us in the staff picks this week, which makes sense because it's the closest line. UTSA is -1.5 at Houston. That game is what time?
I think it's the same time as South Carolina.
Yeah, you got an evening game there. Who do you have in Houston versus UTSA? I wouldn't want to touch that one.
I would not bet it. I think I picked Houston at home, right? What I put on the sheet?
Houston.
Okay.
Yeah, and that's what I did as well. Although I don't know, I might flip it before.
Better quarterback for UTSA, but I think a better overall roster for Houston. A little bit bigger up front. That game, I'm pretty sure, went to triple overtime last year. They played week 1. I'm looking it up now, but I know this is the other end of a home and home. They played in San Antonio last year. Yeah, that game went to triple overtime last year. Houston won it 37-35. Good luck picking that. I mean, I think triple overtime speaks for itself last year.
Yeah, I actually think I unfortunately did pick it last year, and I was sweating bullets the whole time. So I'm just going to opt out of that experience.
It's one of the better week 1 games.
We got Penn State hosting West Virginia, and they had the line that we had was 20.5. We across the board picked them to cover that. I feel pretty good about that.
That's more about West Virginia being bad and probably on the verge of firing Neil Brown than Penn State. Just going on the road to Happy Valley at night with a not that good I mean, I think West Virginia might be the worst team in the Big 12, to be honest with you. But
are you not buying the dark horse hype for Penn State as a national title contender?
I do think that's a really good roster. I like Drew Aller. Yeah. I need to see James Franklin win big games before I believe it. And look, it's always going to be Michigan, Ohio State there. Maybe you can win one of those. I don't think they win both. But for the topic at hand, I think they blow out West Virginia Saturday night.
And if you win one of those and you get that round robin action, maybe
how does the 3-way tiebreaker work if they all go 1-1 against each other? I feel like that's something we're going to hear about a lot this year if it breaks that way. But
I'm sure it's like not BCS rank, but whatever the college football playoff rank, which would probably hurt Penn State just from a name recognition standpoint. Not that they're not a well-known program, but when
there's any team,
comparing against Ohio State,
division in the sport that's getting 2 teams in the playoff, it's the Big Ten East. That's the those 3 I think are all really good.
That is true. All right, we just got a couple more. We got Florida State.
That's the one
versus LSU. That is what, Monday night?
Sunday night. Labor Day weekend, a little Sunday action.
So that's Sunday night at 7:30 Eastern. LSU is -2.5. Where's that at?
It's in Orlando. It's one of those
neutral site.
New Orleans last year. It's like a home and home, but still not on campus, which sucks. But I I got to just stick with my Florida State stuff. I'm optimistic there. Florida State won this game last year with a worse roster than they have now. I wouldn't at all be surprised if LSU won. I'd pick LSU to win the West. I think LSU is the best team in the SEC, not named Georgia. But I'll stick with my Florida State pick and say they win a close game.
Yeah, this one's going to be a good one. Has far-reaching impacts for both of their season-long hopes. Although I think Florida State could lose this one close and then run the table and probably still backdoor in. I mean, same for LSU, I guess, but that's a harder path for LSU. The rest of us picked LSU, so you stand alone on that Florida State pick. It wouldn't surprise me if it went the other way. I tend to think that Florida State's still about a year away with that roster.
Okay.
And then Clemson -13 at Duke. That's the Monday night game, 8 p.m. Eastern. I assume you're picking Clemson. Do you think that they cover that 13-point spread?
I don't think they do. I think I put that on the sheet. Clemson win but not cover.
Yep.
Okay. So, yeah, Duke won 9 games last year. Not a lot of people talked about it. I don't think they're going to be that good. I know they had some really big turnover luck last year. It's going on the road. It's week 1. It's a conference game. Mike Elko's a defensive guy. I've got a salty defense. That just feels like one of those Clemson controls it. And you never think it's in danger. And you look up at the end and it's like 30-17 or something. And they don't quite cover, but they still win.
I agree with you there. This is one of those spots that they usually open up the season in a more dominant fashion. But I do think that line is pretty much right on, but I'll just say that they cover by 14 or 15 or whatever. Yeah. There's a couple other games that we did not pick this week that I think are kind of interesting for South Carolina fans. Virginia and Tennessee, that's at 10 a.m. or sorry, Mountain Time. That's at noon on ABC. Right now, Tennessee is is -28 against Virginia. That sounds about right to me. I think that they're going to blow them out of the water.
It's just it's more about, I mean, it's not their fault. Obviously, they had tragedy way beyond football last year with shooting those 3 players in their roster. Their quarterback transferred out. One of their other quarterbacks just decided to play baseball instead. Virginia's, again, not their fault. It's much better than football. That's going to be one of the worst teams in the Power 5, I think. Just unfortunate circumstance there, and Tennessee probably takes advantage.
Any chance that Indiana gives Ohio State any sort of a fight? Ohio State's picked 30-point.
Well, you see that what Tom Allen did this week, right?
No, I didn't.
He did not reveal his kicker on the depth chart because he didn't want to give Ohio State advantage.
Sneaky.
Because if Ohio State knows Indiana's starting kicker, then you might as well not even play the game. Ohio State's going to blow them out.
Yeah. The other one that you mentioned earlier in the show, Boise State and Washington, I think that's pretty interesting. 3:30 on ABC. Washington is a 14-point favorite. That feels about right just because I think Washington's offense is that good. But I think it could be interesting for the first half or so.
I think Washington covers that, maybe win by like 17. But that's a fun game. I'm excited to see Michael Penix. If you haven't watched him, that's one of the most fun quarterbacks in the country just to watch. I think Washington wins, but that's a good little appetizer for the South Carolina game if you're looking for something in that window before.
All right, one more thing that I wanted to hit on before we get out of here. A couple of season-long predictions for South Carolina, superlatives, things that we'll kind of talk about by the end of the year. We hit on a few of these last week. If you want to go back and check that out, wherever you listen to podcasts, it's on our YouTube channel as well. But let's hit on a couple categories that we did not do last week. How about leading tackler? Who do you think the leading tackler for South Carolina is going to be by season's end?
Boring answer, but I'll take the true freshman who led last year to do it again, Nicky Manwuri. I think he's going to get a lot of chances. I know they're going to want to use safeties more and run help this year. Obviously, he'll get chances on pass. He's just got a nose for the football. I'll take Manwuri, even though that's, not exciting.
See, I tend to think that a lot of the reason that he was the leading tackler last year was because how often
guys were getting to the third level.
Yeah, so I'm going to be a little optimistic and pick a linebacker. I'm going to say Stone Blanton is the leading tackler this year. Takes that step forward and is catching people at the second level instead of the third, hopefully. what about freshman MVP? So we talked about this before the game or before the podcast. Redshirt freshmen count as well if they didn't play last year. But a freshman, new contributor, who do you think is going to stand out above the rest this year?
I'll take your linebacker situation there and go with Pup Howard. I just think that all of these linebackers are going to play a lot just because you've got 4 of them in a 4-2-5, and I think all of them are pretty good. He's going to get chances. I expect him to play a lot Saturday night, to be honest with you. And I think he's a really good player. We've been hearing about him for a while. We know he was the first member of this class to get to campus. Gator Bowl. He's probably further along with this system than any of the other freshmen. We'll go with Pup Howard.
That's a good pick. That probably would be my pick too, but I'm gonna pick something else just to be different. I'm gonna assume that Nick Harbor shakes off whatever little lingering injuries had here through camp, and contributes pretty heavily this year. Scores maybe 5 or 6 touchdowns, and is the MVP of the freshman class. By the way, we didn't get into injuries. Any final word on injuries? I know that we will get Carolina calls tonight, and we'll put up the final injury report on GamecockScoop.com right after that. But what are you hearing on the injury front?
Jatius Gear leaning towards probably. I don't think he's going to play Saturday night. Bam Martin Scott questionable. Connor Cox questionable. I'm not expecting either of them right now, but I wouldn't be surprised they might still be on the travel roster. Nick Harbor, again, we've heard some stuff about that. Maybe not expecting him to play. I think the main stuff you're looking at was Juice Wells. He's going to be good to go. Trey Knox, he had, camp injury. He's going to be good to go. But I think some of that depth might not be as healthy, but we'll get a little bit more from Shane here in 4.5 hours.
All right. Continue to stay plugged into GamecockScoop.com for the latest updates as we head towards the game. We'll be back here Sunday morning to review the game, and then back here the week after for some Furman preview. Thanks to the Spurs Up Show for listening. Great. And we will see you next time.